everyone, this is Peak Entertainment and we're back again, and we're now going to talk about Gina Carano in what will be my third video, part 3, an installment of talking about the recent event of her being fired from the Mandalorian show due to supposedly abhorrent social media posts which covered pronouns on Twitter, remarks on COVID-19, the election, political divides, and comparison to the Holocaust. Now, you can catch up on 2 previous videos when I've talked about these incidents more in depth and length, and I will leave the links for these videos within the description. So, following the recent firing of Gina, it was revealed since that she has teamed up with Ben Shapiro and part of his Daily Wire media company, and this is a company that provides commentary on news, movies and television. And she's recently done an interview where she talks about her experiences and the fallout following her firing from the Mandalorian, and the interview was uploaded onto the Daily Wire Media website a day before now, and people could access that through the PayPal. But since then, it's now been uploaded onto YouTube for everybody to go and watch. So overall, within this interview, she basically covers a lot of what we already know in terms of the actual timeline of events, the reactions and fallout both from people on social media and Lucasfilm and Disney for each individual post that she put online. She talks about her own feelings and reactions to how she felt she was being treated. So you can catch this interview on YouTube, and I think it's around about an hour and 5 minutes. I have watched the interview in its entirety just so I could myself get an overall wider context of exactly what Gina felt about how she was supposedly treated by Lucasfilm. So I won't cover the interview in chronological order. I will just go over some of the points that I feel were most interesting and most revealing about what exactly happened in terms of how Gina had to respond to each of the events that went on. So overall, I think in terms of the actual interview, I thought it was a very sound interview. I think Ben Shapiro handled his questions very well. He was very concise and straight to the point, and Gina conducted herself very well. I feel there was no sugarcoating, there was no hyperbolics, there was no theatrics in terms of the questioning or how Gina was responding. Ben got straight to the point because he straight away addressed the issues that he felt were most relevant, that people wanted to hear most about. As I mentioned before, they went through the whole time of the events in terms of the social media that Gina posted. There was no leading questions. He didn't try to kind of put ideas in Gina's head or lead her down certain path of questioning. I thought Gina herself came across very well. There was no emotional outburst. There was no angry statements or really controversial reactions. She just sat down and answered the questions in a very mature and adult manner. So there was no, I think, Disney bashing, if that is what I'm trying to say. There was no threatening phrases or what could be seen as antagonistic comments made by Gina. It was a very well conducted and professional interview, I felt. So I had no problems with the nature overall. So just going over what Gina spoke about. Now, as I mentioned before, she talked about all of the social media posts. They went through the whole timeline of events. But what I found most interesting in particular was the events surrounding the main source of where this issue all arose from, and that was of course the issue of the pronouns within her Twitter profile. I've explained about this in the previous videos, but just in case anybody doesn't know, she came under fire because her co-actor Pedro Pascal, who plays the lead character in The Mandalorian, he updated his pronouns within his profile, and a lot of fans were asking why Gina didn't do the same. She responded to this by putting in the pronouns beep, bop on the pronouns, and many people within the transgender community, they found it very offensive because they felt she was mocking their cause, and so they took exception to this and insulted her online, calling her transphobic. It's all been out there already. Now, I thought what was really revealing about this issue is when Gina talks about the process of how Lucasfilm and Disney wanted her to respond to this and kind of address this issue. Now, what initially happened was, after we had the fallout and everybody was calling Gina out on this, she initially put out a separate post basically saying that she understood people were reacting, but her being offensive to the transgender community was never her intention. She doesn't feel that she was going to change her pronouns of her bio, which again, she's always entitled to, and that she spoke with Pedro Pascal about the issue to gain a better understanding of what it was all about. So I thought that was very, very well handled. But in the interview itself, she talks about Disney and how they wanted to imply that she make a certain statement. They felt that she was taking away too much attention from the actual Mandalorian show, and they wanted her to meet up with members of the LGBT community in order to get a better understanding of what was going on. And yeah, I think from what I can tell from the interview, she kind of felt, was this really necessary? Why couldn't she just put out a statement in her own words, using her own terminology? Why did she have to necessarily go out and meet with one of the members of the LGBTQ community? And I can understand that to an extent. I can understand why she felt this was an unnecessary step, because it's almost as if they were trying to say, oh, you've committed the crime and now you have to go through some sort of rehabilitation phase where you've got to talk to some members of the LGBTQ in order to gain a better understanding. Now, I don't think she needed a better understanding. I think she perfectly understood what went on. She clearly understood the fallout, why people were taking the offence. She didn't feel that she had caused any offence. So I can agree with her in that sentiment. I don't think she really needed to see anybody from the LGBTQ community, but Disney very much asked her to do this. Now, what Gina also contended with was the fact that Disney, I think, wanted her to speak to around 40 members within the LGBTQ community. Again, I don't know why it had to be 40 members, but what Gina wanted to do was actually speak to these people face to face, right? So she could have a much more of a personal interaction with the people from the community and get her point across and explain why she wasn't trying to cause offence to anybody involved with that community. Now, apparently Disney didn't want to do this. They wanted to have her go on various calls, phone calls and online calls via Zoom, of course, because we were just dealing with the whole COVID outbreak. And she felt that was much more of an impersonal touch, right? Because she doesn't want to talk to loads of faceless names, people who hide behind avatars, so she can't really identify with who exactly she's talking to. Now, I can understand that sentiment as well. We all know this is one of the many problems with social media. You are talking to a lot of people who can hide behind multiple different accounts, multiple avatars, and they can say what they like without any kind of accountability. And she alluded to this in an interview when she talks about the abuse that she suffered and the pressures and the kind of distress when you're getting all of this backlash from faceless names and people who have multiple accounts and you don't really know who they are. So again, I can understand that point of view, that she wants to much more talk to these people on a personal level. She also mentioned that she had further discussions with her media partner about this whole issue here, and those discussions went very well. There were no particular issues on her and regarding her how she addressed this issue. So I think that was really, when she talks about being pressured and being bullied about Lucasfilm, I think this was one of the major cases, how she felt she wasn't allowed to respond in her own particular way, that she was being told what to say, she was being told how to convey her information. So she, to an extent, if you're looking at this, you feel that this is perhaps a violation of somebody's rights. We go into the issue of studio corporation and how they want to control the situation, because as I've mentioned in previous videos, it's all about protecting their brand and protecting their image. So the two perspectives we have here is that Gina wanted to address the issue in her way, and the studio wanted to address it in a way that they felt enhanced or maintained their reputation. And I think that's one of the biggest debates, again, when we talk about how a studio treats its actors or its employees. So she alluded again to the fact that there was a recent event where a Lucasfilm artist or an artist employed under Lucasfilm, they took a picture of her as Cara Dune and they erased it, and I think they replaced it with an image of Ahsoka. And she took offense to that, because she felt, why are they kind of shaming her, if you like, online? Why are they giving this impression that they're kind of erasing her from the show in that regard? So again, you could say maybe that's a bit shady from Lucasfilm. Why did they feel the need to do that? She makes the point, why didn't they just post a picture of another character? Why did they have to go through the process of actually erasing her from the image and then putting in another character? So I can understand that point. Maybe it's not a personal attack, but you could certainly see from her perspective why she felt that that was providing some sort of attack. Another really big revelation, I think, from this interview is that she also stated that she's not the only one who has been bullied by the company, and that she knows a story of another person who has gone through a very similar situation that she's gone through now, and for whatever reason that person hasn't been able to speak up, and how they've also felt that they were victimized as well. Now, of course, for obvious reasons, she can't disclose it, probably from a legal standpoint, and also she mentioned this in the interview that she doesn't want to speak up for somebody else, and yeah, that's fair enough. You know, she doesn't want to talk about other person's case, whoever that person is, whatever case they're involved in. We don't know. Maybe they have spoken up, maybe they've done it behind the scenes rather than have it all transmitted within social media, which I think overall is the right way to do it. If you have certain issues or problems with your employees, it really shouldn't be put out in social media. It should be handled behind closed doors. I think that's the most ideal way to do it. She also alluded to the fact that she was accidentally sent an email regarding her being fired from the show. Now, if you don't know the history, in terms of Twitter, there was all of these hashtags going around. Hashtag fire Gina Carano. This was, of course, following the recent social media post where she posted the image of the Holocaust and used that to support her argument about having different political opinions, and how being vilified for those political opinions can have huge consequences. So the hashtag was going around, fire Gina Carano, and she alluded to the fact that she was being involved in some form of communication. Somebody accidentally sent her a post, and from that post the trend was going on about fire Gina Carano. But then obviously when she's looked at that trail, she's then found out about the Lucasfilm statement that said that they were no longer employing her from the show. So again, we have to understand we are only hearing her side from it, because it came out as well that essentially she was fired on social media. Now, I'm a bit skeptical about that, because I don't believe that a company can actually just fire someone on social media without notifying them. There are many ethical and employment processes that you just can't do that. You know, she would be able to come back at them in some sort of lawsuit for wrongful or unethical dismissal, right? You can't just fire someone on social media without telling them. There has to be a notification process in terms of a dismissal hearing or an email. You know, the standard process would be that the representatives of Lucasfilm would contact the representatives of her agency, and then her agency would communicate to her that she's been fired from the show. So I've never subscribed to that theory. I believe in other suggestions, what people have outlined is that basically her contract expired, and once your contract expired, there's obviously no obligation, right? She was employed, I guess, for 2 seasons. The contract was up, and basically Lucasfilm decided not to renew her contract for season 3, right? So that's really, I think, what happened. They didn't fire her as such. They just didn't renew her contract, which they are perfectly entitled to do, right? And I think what happened was, when we go back in terms of the constant posting of online, I think Gina alluded to this herself. She felt that the writing was on the wall. She felt that they were coming after her. And I think there was some stage where Gina knew that she wasn't going to have her contract extended, because obviously they would have had to tell her months in advance whether her contract was to be extended or not. So I think she came to that stage that she realised it wasn't going to happen. And then that's when she kind of felt, now, well, I'm just going to say what I want regardless. So another revealing aspect is that she stated before that she's never voted. So this was very interesting, because obviously with all of the fallout, particularly of the Trump era, as we all know, all the controversy throughout his term as president. So a lot of people, and it's not just Gina, we've had many celebrities come out and speak their opinions on Trump, whether they're for him or against him. And Gina felt that this was a time when she should take more of an interest in politics and vote for the first time. Now, I look at that, and again, I kind of question a bit, when we talk about the sudden urge for Gina that she had to get these views across, that she had to put these political messages across. Now, I said in my previous videos that I've questioned what was the burning desire to keep posting, because we all know that she was warned. She received a warning. I've talked about this in previous videos, that she was warned after the whole outline of the pronouns issue, that she was warned about Lucasfilm about posting social media online, right? So my overall query has always been, what was the burning desire to keep posting, right? Because as she's mentioned, she's never voted before, so there's no history of her being part of any political entity. Or so I could understand that more if there was a history of her where she's been part of a political belief and her posting was just an ongoing narrative from that. I could understand that more. But for somebody who's never voted previously to keep posting and posting, knowing that it would impact her career, that's what I felt was more of a question for my front. Because again, you have to question, what was the cause that she was really fighting for? What was the cause that was so important that she risked hurting her career and her role within the Mandalorian? So that was one thing I queried as well. So just going on that, in terms of post, she talks again about how she felt about there was a very much of a disparity of information, particularly regarding the wearing of masks. 1 minute we're told that masks won't help at all, and then we're told to wear masks. And I can understand this because we had a very similar situation, me being based in the United Kingdom, where essentially we went into lockdown and then we came out of lockdown. And when we came out of lockdown, there was no initial talk about wearing masks. We were initially told as well, like Gina said, that masks don't really have an effect. And then literally 2 weeks after we came out of lockdown, we were all of a sudden told that we had to wear masks. You had to wear masks going into shops, first of all. And then overall, you had to wear masks going out in general public. So, yeah, there was very much a disparity and very much of a scattershot process in terms of relaying information to people and giving instruction as to the preventative measures they should be taking in terms of COVID. I agree with that completely. Okay, so in that sentiment, I understand that as well. Now, she alluded to the Holocaust post and she felt that she needed to question how it happened, and she felt it was relevant. Now, I've mentioned in previous videos, I just felt it was an inappropriate comparison. I never agreed with how she compared that. I think there were 1,001 different ways that Gina could have got a point across without alluding to the Holocaust. I still feel that she could have literally stated verbatim that people shouldn't be vilified for having strong political opinions, strong political views. Had she just put out a blanket statement like that, okay, it may not have provoked so much of a reaction, but it certainly wouldn't have left her open to much more criticism and scrutiny. So I didn't agree with the actual comparison of the post. She makes further statements about she has a problem, not necessarily with power, but with abusing power and being bullied. She felt that the company has been all over her, watching her like a hawk. Ben also mentioned the fact that the comparison was being made to Pedro Pascal, who I've covered in previous videos as well. He also made very controversial posts when he was talking about Nazi Germany and imprisonment of certain, young people. Gina didn't really say much about that. She just mentioned the fact that yes, there were double standards in terms of how terms are handled, but she didn't show any antagonism to Pedro. And I do believe there is a good relationship between the two, and I'm glad that Gina didn't use that as a way to kind of attack Pedro. And that's what it felt very genuine. I think she wasn't trying to say, oh, Pedro got any special treatment than her, or people viewed Pedro better than her. She just basically said she had a lot of love for Pedro. She's got a very good relationship with him. And the fact that, yeah, it was more a case of double standards within the studio. So I was glad that she didn't use that at all to attack Pedro. So it seemed very genuine as well. Those were really the overall revealing details. She did talk at length later on about her coming into first contact with Ben Shapiro, and she wanted to basically come out swinging. She basically knew, as I alluded to before, that she was coming to the end of her contract, so she didn't want to back down and she didn't want to be told what to do. And then she met up with Ben and got in contact with him. She was one of the first people that kind of reached out to her, and she found that Ben and people involved with his media company were very well spoken, they were very articulate, they were very intelligent, and she felt it was a good way to connect with him and go forward. Now, they have recently announced that they're going to do some film projects and movie projects. We've got no details of what that project will entail, when it will come out. Now, people have had opposing views on this. Now, some people have said this is a major landmark moment because it's showing, or it could be the beginning of a sign that people can break away from the major Hollywood studios and still have a major career. Other people have looked at it and said that this is very much of a backward step. This is a downgrade in position because you're going away from the biggest studio in Disney and one of the biggest IPs in Star Wars to basically go into a much more of a smaller scale media company. So I'm probably erring a bit more to the latter in terms of her career status, because regardless of what you think about Disney, I've said in previous videos, it was a massive opportunity, right? Gina was part of a very successful show in The Mandalorian. It was one of the highest rated, highest streamed shows within entertainment. It got its season 3, and as we all know, they recently announced a huge wave of new television shows within the Star Wars universe, and one of those was, of course, would have been the Rangers of the New Republic, and it was highly hinted that Gina was going to be the major lead role for that character. So I've talked about this already, how there was potential for Gina Carano to have her own show and potentially have her own movie and really enhance her own status as a major leading actress. So that's still how I look at it. That was the opportunity that was there for Gina. So yeah, I think going from that to then going down to making a film with the media company of Ben Shapiro, who I believe the media company have only released one film prior to this event. So it is a downgrade. It is a backward step from where she was in terms of how she is now. And I think we also have to question where Gina will go forward from this, because obviously now coming out of this interview, I think prior to this interview, there may have still been an opportunity for Gina and Lucasfilm to come to some sort of reconciliation, take a bit of time out, and then maybe there was a way that she could come back to the show. But I think now, coming out of this interview, it really has kind of drawn a line on it now, that she really, there's no way back for her now. But my concern has always been that now, in terms of a movie career, it's very unlikely that other studios, right, whether it be Paramount or Warner Brothers, they're not going to employ Gina either, right? Because obviously they're going to look at what happened with this situation with The Mandalorian, and they're going to think, well, maybe this is too much of a problem. If we employ Gina, we don't know if she's going to say certain things on social media, and that may impact her as well. So my opinion, I think in terms of her career itself, I don't think she will now be a major movie actress, whether it will be in a major film company or a major film production or a television series. I don't think that will happen now. I could be wrong, but I'm just looking at it from my perspective. I don't think that will happen. I think what will eventually happen is I think Gina will now become very similar to Ben Shapiro, that she will have her own podcast and she will become much more of a media commentator, where she can provide commentary about political views and issues within the entertainment industry, within politics, and yeah, she will become much more of her own entity as a media commentator. That's what I think will happen. But maybe she'll work with Ben Shapiro for a while and then eventually break off, where maybe she'll have her own YouTube channel or establish her platform in some other capacity. I do believe now that she will go on to have her own platform, and that's fair enough. I think good luck to her. At the end of the day, if she wants to go on a platform where she's more comfortable, where she can feel she can say what she wants, when she wants, and how she wants, then more power to her. I've liked Gina Carano. I was rooting for her throughout to get her own show, etc. So I think that works as well in the long run. So the last point I probably want to make is Lucasfilm as well. Now, the question will be, what does Lucasfilm do? What do they do? Will they respond to any of the statements that Gina made in this interview? Like I said at the beginning of this video, it wasn't really a controversial or a sensationalistic interview, and that's what I liked about it. It did feel very sincere, and it did feel very genuine, and it felt, you know, very, very honest. So again, we do have to realise that this is only Gina's side of it. We've yet to hear anybody come from Lucasfilm and give their own thoughts and opinions from it. Now, to be honest, I don't think we will hear from Lucasfilm, because what Lucasfilm wants, and I've debated about this with people on Twitter, but what Lucasfilm wants more than anything else is for this issue to be forgotten about. They want this whole issue to go away, because as I've mentioned in previous videos, what's paramount and most priority to studios is the brand, is the image, and their ability to make profit from the content that they make, right? So the last thing they want is any controversy, any toxicity, any drama. They don't want that to cloud over the product that they put out, right? So if they don't respond, eventually, and people are not going to agree with me when I say this, it's going to be very unpopular, but eventually this issue will be forgotten about. Let's not give anybody who supports her any more ammunition to kind of create more narrative, more drama behind this issue. Let it all die down. I think it's better for Gina to now draw a line under this. She's made her point. Okay, she said what she's got to say. Now move on from it, because she can't change it. She can't change it. So now if we get another scenario of someone opposed from cancel culture, and yes, if Gina has her own platform, she can comment on it, etc. Because this will not be the last case. You know, this will not be the last time we see a scenario like this. I think the best thing for Gina, like I said, is to pursue her own aspirations, her own career in whatever capacity that will be. And I think that will overall make her a happy person. If she wants to stay on social media, all this fine, fair enough. And then she can move on from there. And I think eventually Lucasfilm, because it will be forgotten about, and Lucasfilm will move on with Boba Fett and Mandalorian, and Gina can move on with other projects that she wants to get involved in. So those were my overall thoughts and feelings. Like I said, it was a very good interview, very sincere. There was no over dramatics, no insinuations. The only big revelation was the whole process behind Disney Plus and how Disney and Lucasfilm, and how they were trying to get Gina to apologize for it. That was the biggest reveal for me in that run. But apart from that, it was a very solid and very professional interview. So I don't think there'll be too much fallout from it, but we will wait and see what happens for it in the long run. So those are my thoughts and feelings on the interview of Gina Carano with Ben Shapiro following the fallout of her being fired from The Mandalorian. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think this will have a positive, negative effect on Lucasfilm? Do you think this will affect the level of subscribers? You know, we've gone through the whole hashtag cancel Disney Plus. Do you think this will be a good thing for Gina or a bad thing for Gina? Will she look back on this or maybe 2-3 years time and think maybe she should have handled things differently? Or do you feel this was definitely the right thing for her to do and that she should have stuck to her guns and now she can move forward? So those are my thoughts. Please hit those like and subscribe buttons and help me provide more content for you in the future. If we get any more news regarding Gina Carano, then I'll provide more as well. So we may indeed get a part 4 and 5 and future installments regarding the issue. But these are my thoughts and feelings on the overall interview itself. So that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.